too much, I need too much. I try too hard and I lose my trust. Don't you know the joke's on me? I work too hard and I lose my shine from chasing down every goddamn dime. Don't you know the joke's on me? 'Cause every door I kick down leaves me limping towards the promise of the good.
Hey, how's it going? Welcome to Tell You What, the podcast. We talk here with musicians and songwriters about songs and music. My name is Mike. Our guest today is Rachel Baiman. Rachel joins us from her home near Nashville to talk about her recent album, Cycles. I had a good time with this discussion. Rachel has a very interesting timeline as a musician. So I decided to focus the first half of our conversation on her creative journey and talk with her about the various transitions in her path. To summarize briefly in advance, Rachel started out playing the fiddle as a youngster, focusing on the styles of the old-time music tradition. She developed some serious skills, at one point winning the Illinois State Fiddle Championship at the age of 17. Rachel headed to Nashville for college, where she earned a reputation as an instrumentalist, playing fiddle and banjo in the studio and on the live stage for a number of Nashville musicians, including Casey Musgraves, the amazing Molly Tuttle, and Caroline Spence, whom we have had here on the podcast. She also became more well-known in the old-time and bluegrass worlds, with her work in the progressive acoustic duo 10-String Symphony with fiddle player Christian Settelmeyer. All right, so then Rachel started to shift her focus somewhat, more towards the singer-songwriter model, and in 2016 released the album Shame, which attracted a lot of attention. Her songs took on issues surrounding growing up female in America, religion, and its intersections with politics. For her recent release, the excellent album Cycles, which came out this year, she traveled to Australia. As Rachel tells us, her songwriting and production choices were heavily influenced by the kind of grungy rock scene in Melbourne. So yeah, from young traditional fiddle prodigy to sought-after Nashville session musician to songwriter whose songs and lyrics attract a fair amount of attention, that's a bit of a ride. And Rachel was very generous with her thoughts as she reflected with us on her journey. A couple of quick notes. I reference Rachel's essays in No Depression magazine. No Depression is a great read. It's a quarterly journal of roots music. Always some interesting things in there. Rachel's regular online column is called The Long Haul, and the article we discussed was from December of 2020 titled When Creativity Takes a Detour. I will link to it on the Tell You What website show page for this episode, but you can find it easily at nodepression.com. Also, we had some hinkiness in our sound recording, some echoing, etc. I did my best to clean it up, but please forgive any remaining traces of weirdness in the sound. I must say I'm really looking forward to doing some interviews in person again soon. So check out Rachel's excellent album Cycles and look for her tour coming to a town near you. And for now, let's get to it. Here's our Tell You What discussion with Rachel Baiman.
It's coming on strong, it's coming up sorrow, and I lose every day to tomorrow. It's coming on strong, it's coming up sorrow, and I lose every day to tomorrow.
Okay, Rachel Baiman, welcome to Tell You What, the podcast. Thanks so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're coming to us from your home in Nashville. Do I have that correct?
Yeah, I live in Madison, which is kind of like a northeast suburb of Nashville.
But you've recently been out on the road, right? Got back on the road for the first time in a while. That must feel pretty good.
Yes, I had my first full band shows at the beginning of June, and prior to that I did a few openers with the lovely Molly Tuttle, so had some fun getting back out there. It felt so good.
I can imagine. And you're playing songs from your new album Cycles. Been a long wait to do that in particular, right? To get those songs live out into the world.
Yeah, I mean the album was recorded in 2019, so it's been a long journey for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So normally here, I would say we're going to go back in time and I'd give you a chance to kind of tell your musical story, early musical memories. But I have to admit, I find your particular musical journey kind of fascinating from a creative path perspective. So if we can, I would like to maybe take it a step at a time and talk about kind of various transitions in your creative life.
Yeah, sure.
We may end up simplifying some things. Life is complicated, particularly a creative life. But I think maybe we can glean some insights as we go along, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, sure. Of
Excellent.
course.
I do want to warn, I'm looking at my notes here. Normally, I try not to talk very much, but I happen to have a lot of notes here, so I'm going to apologize to you and my listeners in advance if they have to hear me talk more.
I'm happy for you to talk more.
Well, that makes one of us. Okay. All right, so let's go back a little bit. As a young person, grew up in the Chicago area, right?
Yeah.
Down the road from where I am right now, actually, in Evanston.
Oh, really? Oh, cool.
Yeah. And you find your way to the fiddle. Do I have that right as your first instrument?
Yeah, the fiddle was my first instrument. I started playing when I was 4.
Wow. Okay. And as I understand it, you played old-time music, right? So how does that happen? Was there that kind of music in and around your home?
It was kind of just a happenstance. I was taking lessons. I just wanted to play an instrument. I was a tiny kid, so obviously
Right.
didn't have like any serious concrete opinions about the style I was playing. But I had an older brother who was playing music, and I thought he was cool. So I wanted to do it too. And my parents just said, oh, there's, this guy down the road who's teaching violin, and that seems convenient. So let's check in with him. And that guy happened to be a fiddle player from Missouri named Mike Casey. And he ended up being like a big mentor to me. I worked with him from the time I was 4 until when I was 18. And I started on fiddle, and he taught me, some basic fiddle tunes, but also how to read music and just kind of basic music stuff that you need to know to play an instrument in general. And eventually I worked with him on banjo and guitar and singing, and so he ended up being pretty formative in my life.
Right. But there was a focus on the genre of old-time music at some point for you?
Yeah, for me, for sure. I mean, I think where I grew up in Chicago and kind of the surrounding rural Illinois area, there's kind of like an Illinois style of fiddling, which is sort of I guess like a mishmash of a little bit of Celtic influence, and then kind of like a Midwest old time, and then some like contest scene influence, which is more of like a Texas swing style.
Okay.
But I kind of fell in love with old time when I was a teenager, because I got the chance to go out to some like workshops outside of Nashville, the Mark O'Connor fiddle camps, and one in Colorado. And that's where I heard kind of more specific stylistic fiddle playing. There's like a certain level of fiddle playing where you're kind of just playing a strange mashup of whatever styles you find based on the tunes you're playing. And I got really intensely into the like different styles, because I was able to hear some of these real masters of the tradition, like Andy Leftwich and Bruce Molsky and Brittany Haas. And
so for the benefit of our listeners, I want to talk about old time music for a second. It's a genre of North American folk music, string instruments, right? And it's kind of based on a catalog of songs that are passed down through the generations. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I think when in fiddle world, when we talk about old time, usually we're talking about a very specific style that comes from the Appalachian region,
right? Which
is a specific confluence of Celtic fiddle tunes and African rhythms and banjo influence. It's this kind of beautiful style that is a result of the specific melting pot of the United States, which I think is what makes it so special.
Yeah. So would I be correct in saying it's a more disciplined approach to music in terms of the way the songs are played, that there's not a lot of, say, soloing or veering off course within the performance?
There's definitely not as much soloing. I wouldn't say it's more disciplined.
Okay.
It's pretty rowdy. And you can definitely experiment, but the experimentation is different. So I think the soloing really came along with bluegrass and the influence of blues and jazz soloing kind of meeting the old time and country world. Old time is much more like it's quite lowbrow in terms of music theory. So it tends to be very like stuff that it's music that people can easily repeat.
Right.
You know? And I don't mean lowbrow as in like it's not a completely specific and amazing style of music. I just mean that it's not something that you're going to be talking about chord structure.
Right.
You know, it's something that everyone should be able to do without having a traditional Western knowledge of music theory.
So I guess the reason I asked that specific question is I'm thinking about it as a creative outlet for you and how you thought about it as a creative outlet as opposed to maybe as a more of a performance-based discipline music, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I don't know that it was at that time when I was a teenager. I really wasn't thinking about performing as much as I was thinking about my ability as a musician.
Right.
Because I was still kind of on that journey of just wanting to be the best fiddle player that I could be. And that was...
let me point out, you did win at least one contest that I read about. So
yeah.
you achieved some of those goals.
That was like a different... I don't know, it's interesting. Like I did go around the kind of rural Illinois contest circuit, and that was like a fun thing to work towards and a fun way to meet some other people my age that were playing, because there really wasn't anyone that I knew in Chicago or in school or anything like that. But once I heard those kind of masters of the fiddle styles, my bar for what was, you know, being a great musician was raised in a very significant way, because
Right.
I just hadn't heard that before. And once I knew what was possible, you know, I really wanted to be able to do it as well. And I don't think I was thinking about, you know, what could I perform or like, you know, I just wanted to have that ability to make that magic that I was hearing.
Right.
It didn't really matter the setting of it to me.
And you're also singing at this point?
No, I was really just strictly playing the fiddle for many, many years. I didn't really start singing until I was in college, like maybe in 19 or 20. Yeah, I was really just single-minded.
Yeah. All right, so now let's go there. You find your way to Nashville for college, right?
Yeah.
You are surrounded by everything that musical Nashville is, right? Eventually, you make your name as a fiddle player, a musician for Nashville artists, right? Caroline Spence, Casey Musgraves, we heard of her.
Yeah.
Many others. You're doing studio work, playing in touring bands. So now maybe do you feel you're getting to maybe be more creative in your approach to your playing, where you're improvising or taking leads with these musicians?
Yeah, I mean, definitely when I moved to Nashville, I was not strictly playing. I mean, I was always playing a variety of styles. I definitely had my phases, but in Nashville, I was playing a lot more song-based music, so that requires a lot of improvisation. I was playing with a lot of bluegrass players, and I also started this duo with my friend Christian called 10-String Symphony, and that was a highly kind of technical, improvisational-based fiddle duo, which kind of opened a lot of doors for me in terms of meeting musicians, touring, and getting some of those like string gigs that you mentioned.
Right.
But also, because it was a fiddle duo and just the two of us, like I kind of had to learn how to be a front person, which meant writing songs, singing, etc. And I was started playing a lot of banjo at this point.
Did you surprise yourself now at this turn that now you're singing and writing songs, considering that wasn't where you were before as a young person?
I did, actually. I was a little bit surprised to find myself there, but I also think that I'm kind of the type of person that puts myself in situations, you know, before I'm really know what I'm doing. I'm a very like learn on the job type of person, so it was kind of just another situation like that where, you know, we have these gigs, we'd like to be singing some songs, and I guess I'll be the one singing them, so I better figure that out, you know. It's kind of one of those, and it's a little, you know, questionable because you're allowing people to watch you learn how to do something rather than waiting until you really know how to do it before you present it. But it's just always the way I've been, and I kind of can't help it because I am always sort of seeking that next challenge. And that was really good. I mean, I grew so much in that project from a combination of factors, including learning a lot from playing with Christian, who's an incredible musician and has a very different background from my own.
So now you're starting to write some of your own songs, but were there other creative outlets you were involved in along the way? I've read some of your essays. I know you were obviously a talented writer, so were there other outlets for you?
That also is more recent. I mean, I think in the order of operations, it would be, fiddle, banjo, singing, writing songs, leading a band, and then songwriting became something that I was very focused on, and then writing became something I was focused on.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So there's, if I have this right, some of your early songwriting, or a lot of them were instrumentals, right? Kind of expressing yourself creatively via the strings.
Yeah, I definitely wrote tunes before I wrote songs. That's true.
Okay. Now you're writing lyrics.
Yeah.
Was it that you felt you had something to say here that could maybe be expressed instrumentally, or do you think you were always working up to this, like you had things in your pocket that were waiting to get done?
For when I was working with 10-string symphony, I feel like the songs were a little bit more stylistically created. So I felt like I was writing music for that project.
Okay.
The first time that I feel like I, as a writer, whether that be a songwriter or otherwise, wanted to say something was when I was writing the music for the album Shame. And that's kind of why I ended up doing that as a solo album, because I felt so personally invested in the messages of the music. So I think that was kind of the first time where I went, oh, I have something I want to say.
Right.
Before that, I think it was more, well, this is a cool idea, or this would be amazing to arrange with the fiddles, or, and I mean, not that I didn't have, real song ideas, but it was just, I guess, a different mindset.
Yeah. I mean, you've taken us to the next chapter. It was next on my list. 2017, you released the album Shane, produced by the amazing Andrew Marlin, by the way. And you had something to say here. Let's just say that. The album was very well received, and now you're getting attention really for, as opposed to previously for your instrumental skills, you're getting attention now for your songwriting, right? You're taking on issues. I'm kind of drawing a creative arc here and maybe simplifying, but did you see kind of this path? Like, was there a point where you transitioned in your mind from instrumentalist to singer-songwriter?
I think with that album, it's not that I thought now my career will be singer-songwriter. It's just that for that particular album, I really didn't want to limit the production possibilities. I had this opportunity to work with Andrew, and I really wanted to feel free to include or not include fiddle as we saw fit, to have whatever instruments we wanted there, because 10-string symphony was a really we just had such a narrow instrumental option, and that's what made the project special, because we had to work within this really specific framework. So we did some interesting creative things. But after years and years and years of playing with only fiddle, putting bass and drums on an album, it just feels amazing, because it's like, oh my God, it's so much easier to achieve this sound, and you have all these options, and I just wanted that freedom with that project. And it wasn't really a specific decision career-wise, it was more just an artistic decision. And then I was like, well, we'll see what happens. Like, I wasn't thinking, oh, this will be the beginning of a new chapter of my career. It was more just like, I want to make this record, and I want to make the songs the way that I want to make them.
Yeah, let's talk about the reaction of that album, though. Up until then, you've been receiving attention as an instrumentalist. Suddenly, people are talking about the words that you've written and what an impact they had, right? That must have been an interesting feeling. I mean, congratulations, because that's pretty amazing.
Thank you.
To have these two things that have blown people away, but the way it happened to you, it must have been interesting to kind of take it in.
Yeah, I mean, it was a really intense time as well. I think that was part of the reaction to the album, is that it was right during the election of Trump and when it was coming out, and people were feeling really freaked out and kind of angry, and myself included, and needing something to latch onto. And so I did feel like I kind of had stepped into this new role of responsibility in terms of the way that people were treating my musical voice in a political way. But I was pretty happy with that. I mean, I think I was happy to take on that role because I was feeling the same things, and I wanted to talk about them. And it was definitely like an intense time, but also really exciting. And there was so much going on in the world, that it didn't feel.
And you were right in the middle of it.
It feels small, but you're just a small piece of these giant things that are happening. So, it's interesting to think back on that.
Yeah. Okay, we're not done with our journey yet, obviously. So this album, previous album, Shane, you talked about how you moved away from having to feel like you had to put the mandolin or fiddle on there, but we still heard a lot of that style on that record. Now here we are with the new record, Cycles, a really different sound to this one, right? In my opinion, at least.
Yeah.
We don't hear a lot of fiddle or mandolin, right? Your creative journey is still going forward, right? So you recorded this in Australia, co-wrote a few of the songs with Australian musician Olivia Hally, who is credited as co-producer also, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I've seen you reference the influence of the Australian music scene on these songs. So how does your creative path take you here, both geographically and creatively? We're in Australia.
Yeah, I think during the time that I was writing for this new record, I was really influenced by some more like indie rock musicians that were coming out with albums that I felt were like really groundbreaking and beautiful and gutsy and speaking to me a lot. And some of those were American artists like Lily Hyatt and Margaret Glaspie, and kind of people coming from the rootsy world, but having this real intense edge and grunge to their work, and kind of a fearlessness in their songwriting that really spoke to me. And additionally, there was a lot of Melbourne-based artists that I was really inspired by, one of which was Olivia's band OPEP.
Right.
And then also Dan Parsons and Courtney Barnett is like, I'm a huge fan of hers, and she's been kind of a gateway for me into like a style of music that I never felt connected to. So just in terms of like following that inspiration, I was writing a lot of songs that felt maybe more flexible stylistically, I think probably as a result of that. And Olivia, who, I've been a huge fan of, happened to be in Nashville, and she reached out and asked if I wanted to write with her. And I was like, absolutely, I'm obsessed with your work. I'd be so excited.
Oh, that's great.
And we had met, but like we hadn't spent a lot of time together. And so we had this day of writing, and that day was when we wrote the song Cycles, which is obviously the title track of the record. And there was a few things going on. I mean, like one of the things was that I felt so comfortable. That song is about my sister-in-law's journey with like losing a child very late in pregnancy. And I was there on the scene when this happened, and it was like pretty traumatic, and watching, my mother and her mother interact with that, with kind of their generational knowledge of the situation, something that I felt very, unknowledgeable about, not having children. And talking to Liv about this, it was just so different to the, talking to a woman about this felt very easy and very right, and it's very, very simple to connect on. And there was kind of this shared understanding there, and it made the songwriting process so magical and easy. And then additionally, working with her musically, you know, when we were putting the song together and it was just flowing so well. And I always say it's like finding someone that you click with artistically. It's kind of like going on a first date and just being like, oh my God, we're going to get married. You know, it's like this magical feeling where you're just like, this is it.
Where there's a will, there's a way. Where there's a will, a price to pay. While you sleep into the evening, I'll be here to guard your dream. And I feel your joy when you wake. I feel your pain when you break open to communication. Hear your voice on every station. My heart goes out to you. Everything is coming soon. I wasn't as you bloom, but I see myself in everything you do.
She has this incredible melodic sensibility, and I'm like a very lyrical writer, which I know is weird because I started as an instrumentalist, but really I live with songs. I live in the world of words. Like that's where I work from. And she just has this huge brain for melodies, and they just seem to kind of flow out of her. And so between the two of us, it seemed like we had this really nice yin and yang in terms of songwriting, where I was kind of always redirecting the words and kind of refining the words, and she was always refining the melody and chord structure and coming up with these like beautiful ideas for that. And so that was a magical experience. And on the heels of that, I was like, well, hey, do you want to make this new record with me? Because, you know, I love working with you and I want you to go through some of these other songs with me. And she accepted, and that was really exciting. And so over the course of the year, we met up a couple times. We did pre-production here in Nashville for about a week, I think. And then I had a couple festival opportunities in Australia. So I was able to kind of play a festival and then go into the studio with my friend Sai, who was playing guitar with me a lot at the time, and for like 7 or 8 days, and then play another festival and then get out of there. So it worked out for us to be in Melbourne at that time. And that's where I wanted to be, because I wanted to see, you know, how do people make records here?
Right.
Where are these sounds coming from? Like, you know, how do we get this edge and this grunge that's coming out of this scene? And what do you do when you make a record live? You know, like just getting those kind of ideas onto it. So
yeah. I want to go back to something you said earlier. You said before you met with Olivia, you had songs that were kind of flexible in their potential style. So when you're writing some of these songs, you're not in your head, you're not already thinking about the style in which they may eventually take, like they are the germ of a song that could go in different directions.
Yeah, I think when I'm writing a song, I try to remove my editing brain and my where is this going brain from it. You know, I think because the thing is, you can write songs, and I often write songs that never emerge. Like you can just write and see what happens, and then go back to it and say, is this a song that belongs in this collection? Is this a song that can work in this style, et cetera, et cetera? And I like to do that because sometimes if I start thinking too much about an end product while I'm writing the song, I can kind of limit it, and I don't want to do that. So I always want to leave those risks in there. Oftentimes the things you think are the strangest when you're writing a song, or the ideas that you think are maybe the dumbest, end up being kind of the best because they're a little unexpected. I really try to keep those kind of mindsets very different. There's kind of like a pure creativity, and then there's kind of the editing process.
Right.
And then the whole, you know, putting the record out, which is like a whole different brain, which really kills my creativity. So I try to really remove that from the whole situation. You
mean like doing things like podcasts?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, I love doing, like, it's not a problem. I love doing these things and I love talking about it. But, you know, for the past 2 months or 3 months around the record, the amount of promo that you do, like, I haven't been writing at all. Like, I just can't I don't even have time to get in the zone, and I'm touring and stuff. So it really goes in cycles, I find.
Cycles.
Yes.
All right. So let's talk about this record and some of these great songs. I want to start with Wyoming Wildflowers.
Sure.
Right? I want to touch again on kind of your creative progression here, maybe from the last record to this. One change that I picked up on is maybe from a songwriting aspect is one of perspective. Previously, maybe you were more direct in your messaging, kind of addressing the big picture head on. On some of these songs, I see maybe what might be called a more bottom-up approach, right?
Yeah.
Giving us personal reflections that maybe resonate to the larger issues. So in this song, right, you address racism, but the first lines are more of a personal reflection. So can you maybe talk about this song in terms of that approach?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. I mean, one thing that I've talked about before is that, I do think that the landscape of activism has changed a lot for me in terms of like what I think is effective in the year 2020 versus the year 2016 when I was writing. And I think, there was a lot of things that hadn't been said in 2016. And in 2020, I feel like a lot has been said and a lot has not been understood and empathized with. So, I think that my perspective on what is a helpful thought to add to the mix is very different. But it's also, really different when you're talking about, with Shame, I was talking about a lot about my own experience and things that personally oppress me, which I feel very comfortable being direct about.
Okay.
And I'm not going to write a song about racism pretending that I know what that feels like. So, I think treatment of those subjects as a writer has to be done with care, and the only perspective that I can really offer is my own perspective on it. So for me, I'm writing for Wyoming Wildflowers. I was writing about how I was experiencing the world, hearing this horrific news coming out of Charlottesville and simultaneously being in a really beautiful place out west and having a really beautiful experience. Just trying to kind of meditate on the kind of the mental zone of somebody that would be so inclined to spend their time on white supremacy, and like what kind of beauty that person must have never seen in order to get there.
Right.
Well, I've covered some groundwork in this job, but I never do stop to look for long. So the fields out west caught my surprise. The color come to you when you open up your eyes. But how come nobody told me? How come nobody showed me Wyoming wildflower? Well, those good old boys, they shout and scream about what the colors on this earth mean. Well, white is the color they're so proud of. Well, white ain't the color, just the absence of. How come nobody told them? How come nobody showed them Wyoming wildflower? Yellow is a new hope, blue as New Orleans, orange is the ripest fruit, red is the cheek of a child's delight, and purple is the cold of twilight.
Okay, let's talk about When You Bloom. I really like this song.
Thank you.
It's a song about a personal relationship. I think you do a really nice job bringing us inside this relationship with the specific details in the verses here. I think I read this is about you and your sister. Do I have that right?
Yeah, this is about my little sister.
Can you talk about this one a little bit?
Yeah, well, I guess this is one that I wrote. I wrote all the verses and the pre-chorus, and I brought to Liv, and I was like, I don't know, this one might be crap. And we sat down, and she's like, I have this melody that I've been playing with, and it was that beautiful chorus melody. If you're gonna run up the mountain. It's just something I would never conceive of melodically, because it's really hard. It's a really hard melody to sing, and
Yep.
it's so outside of the bounds of my traditional folk melody structures, and she sang me that melody, and I was like, oh my God. And we wrote those words together about Every Ugly Feeling, and she was talking about her relationship with her sister, and it was like very emotional. And I love, it's one of my favorites now.
I gotta tell you, my next question is, how did the amazing melody of this song make its way into the song? Because it is such a, it goes to a surprising place, right? And that is what makes a great hook, and it works so well.
Yeah, that's Liv. That's that crazy genius that she has with melody, and to me, it helps the rest of the song, which is quite stock standard melodically, feel like that becomes a nice base and a nice rooting for this kind of takeoff. So it's like this really nice contrast, and I think there's a lot of kind of moments on the record that I feel like we both pushed each other to, like, I kind of would hold her back from certain pop sensibilities, and then she would kind of push me. So, like, this is one of those songs where we ended up, the production is really restrained, and that's because of me, but the soaringness is there, and that's because of her. So I think there was kind of a cool play there, push and pull.
If you're gonna run up the mountain back to the bottom, you don't have to do it alone. I remember every ugly feeling that you ever got. 15 hours to Colorado.
Okay, you brought it up about the pop sensibility, so let's talk about the song Hope It Hurts. This is another one of my favorites. I think this has kind of a great pop rock kind of swing to it. I think it is a great kind of groove, but lyrically it hits pretty hard. I was particularly struck by the kind of subtle shift in the repeating title line late in the song, where it goes from "when you hope it hurts" to "and I hope it hurts." That really kind of got me. So what can you tell us about how this one came about?
Well, interestingly, even though this was definitely one of the more poppy tunes, it's one that I wrote on my own and really late in the process. It was kind of one that we didn't even know if it was going to make the album. Although it ended up being, one of, I think also one of Liv's favorites because of the production and the kind of the simplicity of the song. And yeah, I mean, I wrote it really, it's a raw, an angry song, and I wrote it when I was feeling that way. It's kind of one of those Dear Diary songs, which can be kind of, I don't know, they can kind of verge either way, I think. And whenever I write something from a place of that much vulnerability, I have to kind of sit with it for a while to keep revisiting it and going, like, is this something that is objectively going to connect with people, or do I just feel it a lot? And
I think you made the right decision.
Yeah, thank you. But the shift in the chorus is just kind of I guess it's just a nod to my internal, strife. So there's kind of like this external sense of anger, and then it kind of turns inward on the self because you're so frustrated with your own mental hang-ups and your own feelings, and you just want them to go away. And I think that's like part of the kind of real honesty and vulnerability of the song. And but it's like, I like that it's part of the kind of like clever wording, so I get to hide behind that a little bit.
I'm not so damn naive. Don't tell me that you still believe in me. You wanna meet for lunch. I'm just waiting for that sucker punch to land. 'Cause when you hope it hurts, when you hope it hurts, when you hope it hurts sometimes. When you hope it hurts, when you hope it hurts, when you hope it hurts sometimes.
Okay, let's talk more about clever wording. I am struck by some of your rhyming, really creative and catchy.
Oh, thank you.
In the song Young Love, for example, I think you rhyme 3 things with spaghetti.
I get that. I do get comments about that sometimes, like, way to rhyme spaghetti.
I guess as the kids say, I like your rhymes. I don't know if I think the kids say that.
I don't know if the kids say that.
I hope my kids aren't listening to this. But I'm guessing you enjoy this aspect of your writing. Do you sometimes come up with like a rhyming couplet and work out from there? Does that happen?
I do sometimes like just go on the internet and go like what rhymes with and explore the options. Spaghetti was not one of those. I'm trying to think. Okay, so maybe plant a tree, giving one seed to bury. I'm trying to remember the words. Oh yeah, I know that you'd and if the power went out, you'd have a light ready. I'm just a bundle of nerves, all spaghetti. But if I was to cash in my chips, it'd just be petty. Spaghetti's actually not that hard to rhyme with.
There you go.
That verse, though, I love to kind of include very real specifics into songs. And I wrote this song about my husband, and he's like so measured and careful. You know, he's kind of like the real calm energy, and I'm like the frantic, as you might guess from this song, because I'm the spaghetti, the bundle of nerves. Right. It is funny because I've written this song and everything, and then like we had this little old tornado here in Nashville right before the pandemic, which was really crazy, and honestly it was like such a devastating 1-2 punch. I mean, we had fundraisers for buildings knocked down in the tornado that were then canceled because of the pandemic. In the same week, you know, it was just like and things closing down for the pandemic here in Nashville, where, you know, everyone is either a musician or working in the service industry to support their musical careers. It was just like, oh my God. But that week, our house lost power, I think, for 6 days or something, quite a while. But George, my husband, was like, it would be like 4 p.m. and he was like, okay, it's going to get dark in a couple hours. So I've gathered these lights and I've gathered these candles and these flashlights and I'm going to put them here and here. And I was like, oh my God, like this could not be more true to this song. Like I was so proud of myself for having predicted that reality.
Life imitates art.
Yes. It was like, I was like, yes.
I know that you plant a tree, giving one seed to bury. And if the power went out, you'd have a light ready. Well, I'm just a bundle of nerves, all spaghetti. Just being petty. Oh, young love is growing up, it's getting older. Oh, young love ain't gonna do what it's told anymore. Oh, young love is acting up, it's throwing us all around. Oh, young love is lashing out, but I stand my ground.
Slight left field question. I read your recent essay in No Depression about interior design as another creative outlet of yours, right?
That's awesome that you read that.
Fun essay. You talk in the essay about similarities in process you find between these two creative pursuits, and it's really fun. I'm going to maybe put a link up on the website so people can read it for themselves. So I would encourage people to read the article because it is so creative and fun. My question is this. I'd like to talk to people about creative process and putting themselves in a creative mindset. Do you ever find when you are doing interior design, you come up with a song idea?
Oh, that's an interesting idea.
Or maybe when you're writing a song, you think about like if I put that statue with that, rug or something.
Yeah, I think, okay, so with song ideas, I know that a lot of people have really good, diligent habits for writing, and I'm not one of those people. I am like very sporadic, so I will spend zero time thinking about songs for several weeks, and then I will randomly get excited about some idea and write it down, and delve into, kind of a zone where I write a bunch of songs in a row. And it's really dependent for me on just like where I am in my brain. So I don't feel like there's anything in particular that inspire, I don't feel like that doing interior design is like going to inspire that. But I do feel like what the similarity for me is more in the process of producing a song. So like this year I got to do 2 production projects where I was just the producer for 2 friends that were making albums.
Okay.
And that feels really similar to putting together a room, because it's like, the house or the space itself was the song. It's kind of like the bare bones. So I feel more relationship between producing, which is like layering things, presenting things, styling things, than writing a song, which would be like building a house, like, I don't know.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but
I'm not sure what I was looking for there. I just thought it's a fascinating.
But it's cool that you read that. Like, I appreciate your interest.
Well, New Depression is a great magazine, so I find myself, I have subscriptions, so you have a column in there, a regular column.
Yes,
so
yes.
You've written some great stuff. I want to cover one more thing. We really haven't talked about your singing, and you have such a great command of your voice. You use it so well. How did that become a part of what you do creatively?
That has again been one of those weird, just like trial and error things where I decided I probably needed to figure it out. So I just like put myself in a position where I had to do it. And, a lot of people had to hear me sing really badly for a long time. When I listen back to some of the early recordings I made, I'm just like, oh my God, I can't believe that I, put this out into the world. But that is just how it is, You gotta let people watch you learn and grow. And I really feel like vocally I'm always, in process. I don't feel like I'm a technically perfect singer by any means. And the only thing that, relieves me of that stress is that I really love imperfect singers. Like a lot of the singers that I listen to are not people that, would be considered, like, they're not always in tune. They're not always like perfectly.
Courtney Barnett, for example.
Yeah, I mean, Courtney Barnett has like made a career out of singing out of tune,
right.
And I love that. Like, it
works very well.
Yeah, I love imperfection in music, and so I think that because I have that mindset, it's really freeing, because I don't have to stress as much about the fact that I'm a highly imperfect singer. And I try to think more and more about emotion and communication and tone and like conversational tone when I'm singing. And actually the pandemic has been really good for my singing, because every single thing I've done musically in the past year and a half has been recorded, and I've pretty much heard it back. So every performance has been a live stream, or a video, or me, in my shed recording something to put on a record, or whatever. So there's been no singing that has gone into the world and not been heard back by me. And
That's
so
interesting.
it's been a very intense mirror.
Yeah.
And the more studio recording I do, the more comfortable I become with my voice as well, because when you're recording a record, at least when I'm recording a record, I'm sitting very, very intensely with every single word in a song and trying to get it exactly how I want, and realizing through the process of production that what you want isn't always the most perfect take, because you don't want it to lack feeling and personality, and sometimes you go for those imperfections over over editing. Finding that line is really important, and it also helps me personally like figure out what I want to do live vocally and kind of what I'm striving for. So I mean, thank you for saying that about my voice. I've always felt like that was just something that was highly imperfect, but I was just okay with that.
Yeah. All right. I've taken up almost enough of your time. Final kind of big picture question. You have taken us on this great journey through your creative life, which has been so interesting, I think, in terms of the transitions and the paths you've taken. So, looking globally and maybe looking forward, do you see your journey as one where you now would say, what's next? I'm going to do this other thing or change this way? Or is it just more organic and you take things as they present themselves to you and maybe change what you're doing or maybe not?
Yeah, definitely the latter. I mean, I think that I do go in those circles in my mind of trying to plan what I should do. And I always come back to the fact that I have to kind of just relax into the artistic side of it and see what emerges, because I really don't want to force anything. I think that's how you make bad records, you know?
Right.
So I have some ideas, you know, about what's next, and I'm always kind of pondering it. I'm really, because I recorded this album so long ago, I'm like already very, very excited to record again. And
right.
honestly, like if I had the budget, I'd be in the studio all the time because it's kind of my happy place. But I do feel like, you know, I haven't made a record in Nashville yet, and I'm feeling more interested in the production side, having done these projects for other people where I was playing the producer role. So part of me wants to just go in to my favorite studio in Nashville and do a project of my own, you know, where I'm self-producing. And then part of me is like, well, you know, collaboration is kind of what pushes you outside of your zone. And so I've just kind of been playing with those two ideas, and I don't know, we'll see what happens. I feel like I always know it when it comes.
Well, I'll tell you, based on all we've discussed here, I think your instincts have worked in your favor so far. So
thank you.
I think you have something figured out, at least in terms of that. Thanks so much for taking this time, Rachel. This has been a great chat. Now you get to go back out on the road, right?
Yeah.
I think I saw you have some UK touring plans. Fingers crossed that's going to work out for you.
Yeah, I'll be out west in August, and then some festival dates all over the place, and then to the UK, and I'll be back in the Chicago area in October.
I hope to see you at that show.
Yes,
I look forward to that.
I hope so as well.
At Martyrs, if I have that right.
Yep, October 15th at Martyrs.
Excellent. All right, Rachel, thanks so much again.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, and thanks for your interest.
There's no going back, so